My grandfather was a small farmer. Now, small farmer has a lot of connotations in the modern day, especially in this part of the country. But he truly was a small farmer. And my recollections of spending time with him was on long walks and places like this and having wonderful conversations. Those are my recollections of my time with him. After that, I grew up as a very simple, straightforward, middle class boy with an upbringing which was hanging together. My parents brought me up with a value system which said substance over style, which said the power of curd rice, which said things of that order, but everything pointing to the fact that it's important for you to do, it's important for you to be. The diet for us came from two important aspects. One was conversation. Two was choice. They told us a lot of things that you could perhaps do. They gave us a lot of choice, but they didn't give us choice with one thing. And that was basic manners and etiquette of saying thank you. And therefore, I begin today thanking two gentlemen here. Thank you, Gautam, and thank you, Yash, for having me here. This is an awesome platform to start off a conversation, invoking my parents and my grandparents and all the strength that perhaps they can give for me to speak here. At the end of this session, you're going to get thank you, and all the folks at HR at Philips. Thank you very much. You guys are really awesome. Some of the things that we in the entire HR community is looking at and saying, my goodness, these guys are going real places. So congratulations to you. Thank you for putting together such awesome things that you guys do. And thank you for keeping the rest of the community on tenterhooks. Thank you so much. Lead the way. So at the end of this presentation, you're going to get 7 things to do for world domination. Really? 7 things. But sadly, I have no grand pronouncements to make like that. I wish I had. I have no grand pronouncements to make like that. And I have my own little dilemmas that I want to present to you. You know, I sometimes I fear that what I speak may be attempting to be simple but tending to be too simplistic. At the same time, I am truly a village boy. Please keep that in mind. And I try and see if I can keep things natural. Many years ago, there was this wonderful book, and if you haven't read that book, there's a beautiful book called the Clue Train Manifesto. And that said very simply that markets are in conversations. If you're able to mine and if you're able to have good conversations, there are your markets. That's what that wonderful book said. And if you want to picture me, you can picture me as a village boy who comes to this big city, looks at this big grand lights that Philips puts out, and then looks at all of this and says, my God, what do I do here? But what I bring with me is a set of conversations, a set of my own stories about where I come from and what I do, and perhaps take a few stories from here, like what Vivek shared just now, and take it back to my own area and see if we can do some reflection, do some work. And that's where I am coming from. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk to you a few things about a story. This is my own story. That's the safest thing that you can do. Vivek can't beat me on that because it's my story, right? Nobody can beat me on that because it's my personal story. Now, I was wondering what kind of personal story do I share? I first thought I'll devise the whole thing around running to the learning function. you can build a lot around running to the learning function. The learning function is the most happening of functions right now. You have a variety of things that are happening. You have technology which is bringing things together. You have things like the MOOCs, which are the massively open online courses which are on. You have mobile devices beaming lessons. You have people connecting remote. You have a whole heap of things. And therefore, I thought maybe running to the learning function would also sound very appropriate, and thought maybe that's a good way to start. Then I said, but what about running away from the learning function? There are a lot of questions about learning and development which are there right now. People ask questions around what value, like what Vivek rightly pointed out just a few minutes ago. What value do you bring to the table? And when existence is based on quarterly results, and when long term is 3 months, what do you do? And therefore the question mark around, is it about really running from the learning function? And I decided to get a little cheeky and said, may not be running to the learning function or running from the learning function. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about running the learning function. And when I speak about running the learning function, I also thought I could perhaps get away with a very kind audience like this by just speaking about running, which I do. I have been running a couple of marathons, and my story today is about my journey in running. So if anybody is interested in my running story, well, the next half an hour is the time. Now, so this is going to be my story. I'm going to take you through how it all started, where I am, and by the way, take a little bit of deviations then and there to do justice to the Philips HR talks and speak about learning as well, and see if both are connected in some form. So I started with my running. It was completely incidental. One of my friends said, just come. Had he said, come practice for a marathon, I would have just said, just buzz off. He said, just come. I'm going to a place, there are a good, nice, interesting set of people, just come. And when I went there, I figured a few things. And the first thing I figured there was a coach, and he said, we're practicing for the marathon. The first thing I remember telling him very clearly is, I'm not running any marathon here, please. I'm here just because that guy called me, and I'm just here because he said, just come. That's how it all started. Now, the point I realized later on was, it's not that you don't have to go fast, but you just had to go. You just had to start somewhere. And that's what the coach said. I remember him telling me very clearly, it was 5:45 in the morning. I still recall his face saying, I don't want you running a marathon. He was very dismissive. And that was perking me up. He said, I don't want you running a marathon, just run. That's what he said. And he said, okay, if that's the game, I will go ahead and try it. That's where it started. Now, in the learning function, learning is very infectious. If you have people who are infected, so if learning needs to thrive in an organization, it's an infectious thing. But somebody or a set of people need to be infected. And there has to be an ecosystem for the learning virus to thrive, right? So somebody has to be infected, and there has to be an ecosystem for the learning virus to thrive. It has to sound a lot like play. And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, every word has meaning. And all of us have a certain meaning for every single word. For instance, I'll give you this. What does this word sound like to you? Sorry? Cutting up. There are people who go to line managers, many of you are line managers here, and say, we'll do an intervention for you. What do you mean? Allow me to do my job. I don't need any interventions here. You remember the old Doordarshan days when they're sorry for the interruption? That's what comes to your mind. You don't want to do any interventions here, please. Please stay away. These are simple things, but these matter much. The other thing that we have is in our organization, well, I speak at a personal level, but I'll just quote one example from our organization, which is coaching. We said coaching, we'll do a program around coaching. It was very interesting. We got a set of people to the room and said, let's do coaching. And they said, but what kind of coaching is this? Are you going to teach us like how they do coaching classes outside? Are you going to do stuff around getting better with cricket? There are sports coaches, but what kind of coaching is this? Because everybody's understanding of coaching was very different. And therefore, every word is meaning. And in a learning function or in the HR function, it's important for us to understand where people come from before we even start speaking about a particular topic. It's extremely important. It may sound very simplistic, but it's extremely, extremely important. At the same time, I also want to touch upon another side. There is a front end which needs to be simple, but there has to be a lot of rigor. And this is my personal feeling, that there has to be a lot of rigor in the back end, which talks about academic rigor. Now, I interact with a whole heap of HR and line managers and learning professionals and speak to them about what kind of researches have you read in the last so many years, last so many months. And usually, there isn't much. And I think there needs to be a whole lot more into academic research and rigor, which has to be front end very simple, but back end very, very rigorous. For learning in itself, I wonder how many of us go into researches from Chris Agiris many, many years ago, or for that matter, Donald Shawn. Many years ago, research done, very pristine, holds true to the day. It's extremely important for us, ladies and gentlemen. And therefore, it's important for us to do two things: to see what our line managers and our fellow colleagues don't see, yet get them to see something which they see value in. It's important for us to see. That brings to a close my first story. What do we see? My second story is of a little bit of a interesting story again, but I'll take you right there. If any of you are familiar with Mumbai, there's this wonderful place called Marine Drive. So that's where we go for our long runs there. And we went for a long run for the first time. The coach said, run till the aquarium and come back. Now, on a car drive, I realized the aquarium was quite far back. I said, what do you mean run till the aquarium and come back? That's a lot. Where is it? So he gave me one very important rule, which I remember to the date, is the finish line is just till where your eyes can see, not the actual finish line. If you're going to think about the actual finish line, which is 21 kilometers away, you're never going to even start. You start with the finish line till the point that your eyes can see. An important lesson that I've never forgotten. But when we work in the learning function, it's extremely important for us to see how we can chunk up learning. How can we break down large fragments that we offer our participants and our audiences? Very small fragments. Small fragments which the best learning managers know how to break it up. But in the modern day, it's important to see how can we allow them to string it back together. If we have found, or I particularly have found, that when we do everything together and give it to them, or give it to people, people say, please, if you've done everything, might as well you take the course, or whatever offering that you're giving me. I'm not interested in it. And therefore, it's important for us to give that choice and help them string things together. And that is something which is important when we say one at a time. Many times, I have personally made the mistake of offering several things to people. And when you offer several things to people, you can be rest assured, nothing gets done. So one thing to people, and please let's try and see if we can chunk it together in small fragments. My third story for you is this. We had a lot of CXOs, we had directors, we had entrepreneurs, we had ad professionals, everybody running. Every one of us were running. But what I realized was all of us were running for a very different reason. Now, I'll tell you my own reason. Many years ago, there was one insurance agent who was after my life, who followed me up at every nook and corner. Wherever he would see me, he would text me, he would then ping me, and once I said, okay, I'm busy, he would call me. He'd do everything to follow up, and finally he got me. So I said, for the sake of his nag, nothing else, for the sake of his nag, I said, I'm taking your policy. So I signed up for his policy, and he said, you've got to go for a medical certification, medical test. And went to the medical test. The doc said, my friend, you're not overweight, you're obese. I was a huge guy at that point in time. I was huge, let's leave it at that. And I just said, at that point in time, that was a huge wake-up call for me. I said, I've got to do something about this. And therefore, what happened was everybody had a different reason to take to running. There were entrepreneurs who were running for the sake of running. There were film directors who were running because it helped them de-stress. There were CXOs who were running because it helped them network. People were running for different reasons. And I didn't know, but Vivek was just telling me he runs half marathons as well. So, I mean, maybe you should catch up with him later on to figure out why he is running as well. But it's a good thing. I think we should all get running after this speech. Okay? But what you eat in private, you wear in public. There are a lot of people recognize and resonate with that. But a lot of people are running for this reason as well. And I figured that the coaches that were there with us, they really did nothing. We were doing all the running, but they did nothing. They used to just stand around and go run there and come. And the other thing that they used to do was they used to be around. They used to come in their bikes. While you were running, they used to be on their bikes. And they used to say, come on. You try running, man. Don't tell me all that from your bike. But that's what they did. And most important, they said things like, move your hands. And there you're running and you're wondering, what do you mean move your hands? I'm moving every conceivable muscle in my body, and you seem to say move your hand. But those were the things that they used to tell us. And that used to get us tremendously engaged because of the fact they were around. And there was one mistake that I was doing, which was for runners out here, you would resonate with me, which is I was landing on my heel, which is a major problem. I didn't realize that. But they used to keep telling me, don't land on your heel, you would damage your knee. I said, yeah, of course. It sank here, but then when I started running, there are 100 other things to think of, which includes how the hell am I going to complete this distance? And while running, I was not thinking about landing on my heel, and that was precisely what I was doing. Which is when fellow runners used to run alongside me, and there was one day when two people took it upon themselves to keep reminding me, saying, hey, don't land on your heel, don't land on your heel. And that change for me happened while I was running, not while I was doing something else. So it wasn't something as though which happened before or after, but it happened on the run. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if we were to take this into learning, often we have various instances where people are sent to classrooms and given e-learning content, or sent to assessment centers and a variety of things, and are expected to learn and are expected to bring back to work. Now, here is a question that we have, which is, why should I bring back something to work? If work in itself can provide me all the learning, must it not be enough? Must it not be rich? And therefore, 70-20-10 is not an academically proven theory or concept, but it is something which resonates with most of us. And I'm going to ask you one question in learning and development, which is, how many of us in learning pause and think about how rich is your job content. We start from what are the learning needs. Maybe it's time for us to turn around and say, how rich is your job? What are you learning on your job? And not necessarily saying, what are the gaps? Now, the moment we focus on how rich is your job, and the moment we start focusing on what kind of learnings can you get while you're working on your job, things change dramatically. Things change dramatically because there are 3 people involved while I'm doing my job. My immediate manager is involved, I am involved, and my entire ecosystem is involved. Now, if these 3 things are involved while I'm doing my job, and if my job is structured in such a way that I learn a heap of things, I don't need any external quote unquote intervention per se. I can build something very nice. Now, this is a point where I would like to pause a little bit and speak about the importance of reflection. All of us have a clear understanding about the importance of experience, but the importance of reflection and what reflection can do to experience is mammoth. We often, in our quest for providing employees with different kinds of experience, we miss providing opportunities for employees to reflect on the experiences that they have. Now, one of our, in Asian Paints, one of our recent moves, recent as in within the last 2 years, the head of IT moved as the head of manufacturing. Now, that's a huge shift in terms of experience, but it's also important to facilitate conversations around these kinds of moves. What have you moved? What have you gained? What kind of experiences do you have? And what can we do around this? A book that I would highly recommend that that Mr. Vivek Patwardhan, one of my gurus, spoke of very highly, and I'm basically reveling in this book, is this wonderful book called The Ambiguities of Experience by a gentleman by the name James March. Maybe you should give this book a quick look. And therefore, what we are speaking of, after we spoke about seeing and chunking, we are speaking of the third aspect, which is building collaborative experiences. Now we go back to my running story, and I'm sorry to intervene with learning tips then and there, but I go back to my running story. Now, again, I go back to Marine Drive, which is where most of my memories of running go, because that's where most of the struggles happen, because it's just by the sea, and when the sea is full of itself, and the sun is full of himself, and when you are running, you're just lost. But it was a wonderful, wonderful occasion, because I was running, I was tired, and I was wondering, why should I be doing this? And I found a lot of excuses, and the most prominent of them was, any idea? What's the most prominent of excuses? I don't have time. Where is the time? Why am I doing? Where is the time for me to get up and do all this running? Which is when I had a chance to run alongside one of the world's with the CEO of one of the world's largest IT firms. So both of us were running together, and he was surprisingly comfortable. He's many years older than me. He was surprisingly comfortable, and I was huffing and puffing and trying to keep pace with him. And the one question that I had at that one moment, because we were both running, and these things you share as a runner because you share a bond, and both of you were sweating it out. So the one question that I had for him was, how do you get time to do this? You're the CEO of this big company and you're running, and how do you get time to do this? So I remember breathing twice, thrice hard and say, how do you get time to do this? And he, without a wisp of taking a hard breath, said, you don't get time for running, you make time for running. Which was a singularly defining moment, if I were to call it, in my running career, which told me that if you had something in your mind, you have 100 other things that can come in the way, but most importantly, if you make time for it, you can do something which is far, far better. Now, if we switch to the learning example, this is an ad from Asian Paints many years ago, which said, "Mera wala shade." I wonder if any of you have recollections of this ad. Mera wala shade was a very successful campaign. The emphasis was not on the shade as much as in Mera wala. The emphasis was on choice, and that choice had to be built. Now, if you have to build choice, there are many creative solutions for building choice using learning in itself. Many of us in the learning fraternity use choice very limitedly. That's an accusation that I can make of myself. And we are trying to break off those choices and try and see if we can do unstructured things. For instance, can we use literature for learning? I remember Abhijit Bajri, the CLO of Wipro, speaking about taking his top management to the Jaipur Literature Festival for understanding and reflection. For instance, we have had conversations about how do we get people to go to a hospital just for a visit to have an understanding around sensitivity better. Now, these are unstructured modes of thinking, but these are important for the day. These are extremely important for the day because these are the ones that will carry us through. And more importantly, these are very close to performance that people will be doing and helping people do the job on the job and not necessarily off the job learning. And these help people connect dots and more importantly help in co-creation and building choice. Now comes my next story. This is me running. I thought you'll clap. Thank you. From being very unfit and not being able to do anything at all, I was able to run. I was so delighted. The first half marathon that I ran 4 or 5 years ago, I was delighted. I was extremely happy. And I was euphoric when they said I was about 2 hours and 12 minutes or so. I was euphoric. I was on top of the world. And then I met somebody else. I immediately promptly went and blogged about it and called it Also Ran. And I was really on cloud nine. And then I met somebody else who said, "What time did you do?" So yeah, of course, 2 hours and 10 minutes. So he said, "You didn't do under 2?" That moment was a moment of implosion for me. That there is something called under 2 which these guys are after and they've been doing so well. And here I was with the euphoria of having completed. And here was somebody who at a point with his perspective just saying, "It's okay." And that moment of implosion again is a very fresh thought in my mind. To me, if you ran, you're a runner. It didn't matter what time you finished in. If you ran, you're a runner. You didn't run for time. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is not a uniformly held notion. People run for time as well. And it was important for me to understand that, there is another set of people who do this as well. And it was a very important understanding for me at that point in time. But nevertheless, just for us to quickly get back into connecting to learning, which I'm trying hard to do here, which is to say learning as much as running is a very personal journey. It's a very, very intensely personal journey. In corporate settings, we try to make it extremely standardized offerings, standardized expectations, but it's an intensely personal journey. And we have to recognize that of all our people, that learning is intensely personal. It's extremely, extremely personal. Now, many of us in learning and in HR have been very keenly working on various things that we want to do to various people. but how badly do they want it is something that we often ignore. And is there something that we can do to help them get to how badly they want it? We do a lot of work downstream, but can we try and change our work and move it upstream, which is not necessarily trying to offer things to people, but necessarily trying to create an innate need for it. As Vivek was saying just a while ago, at a click of a button, people can figure out the best of things. I'm sure there is a YouTube video to tell you how to navigate your way to sit in the Philips canteen. I'm just making that up, but you never know. If there isn't one, there will soon be one. But I'm sure there is a video on it. I'm sure there is some kind of blog post which says the red color chair in this corner, in this room is not okay. It is so very easy for people to pick things up. And therefore the need for us has shifted from downstream work to upstream work. While our measures, while our goals, while the way in which we approach learning is still downstream work. But the need of the hour is for us to shift upstream, much more upstream than where we are right now. I wanted to spend a minute on this. We spoke about learning being an intensely personal journey. Learning, like running, is absolute creation. And when you compare it with somebody else, it becomes relative creation. Just because I ran in 2 hours and 10 minutes and somebody ran in 2 hours, you cannot take away the fact that I ran 21 kilometers. And that is important. And it's important for us to understand everybody who goes through a learning journey goes through a creation journey. And we have to learn to look and respect it from a perspective of absolute creation and not necessarily relative creation. Measurement. It's a big deal, like 2 hours and 2 hours and 10. Usually the best of measures is to have outcome measures. And I would like to just say measures are good if it's jointly set by everybody. And measurement by itself, if you have the learner in there, if we ask the learner, and if you ask the immediate manager, and if you ask the ecosystem, and if you have the me in the measure properly done, measure is assured. So measurement is largely about having the me, but oftentimes it's imposed, saying this is how we want to measure your learning. But that gentleman, because of the fact, that gentleman or the lady, because of the fact that it's so personal, may have a different set of yardsticks completely. And that is what will bring about commitment. I've come to the last couple of stories, and that man, after he said, haven't you run 2 hours? He started getting to my nerve, and therefore I started getting very measurement focused. I started timing every single run. I started doing more analysis than I was running. I was doing so much analysis that I could have launched a satellite to Saturn. NASA could have been outbeaten by my analysis of how much speed that I was running at and all of that. But what I was also realizing was I was letting what I couldn't do interfere with what I could do. What I could do was I could easily run, but what I couldn't do was to think about all the data and things like that and then run. And therefore what I realized was I wasn't running for the joy of running, but I was running for the results that were counting. Suddenly it wasn't fun anymore. And when you run happy, you run far. But when you are running out under pressure, you're not running far, but every step is measured, and it's very difficult. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, what you become is more important than just merely achieving a goal. And what I became at the end of the whole thing was an incomplete runner, so to speak. We have a whole heap of tools in learning as well, which is assessment centers, we have feedback, we have training, we have coaching, we have competencies, we have mentoring, we have a whole heap of things, 360 degrees. But remember, a tool is a tool is a tool. If there's one message that I would request you to ponder upon while you go back from here, it is this: that a tool is a tool is a tool. Oftentimes we confuse a tool with a measure and a measure with a goal. These three are three different things, and a tool has to be looked at just as a tool. Reflection is important, conversation is important, but for the next gen learning teams, here is my thought, that digital conversations are happening in the public arena, even without you having that conversation. Now, is it possible for us and in the new age learning team to help our employees mine digital conversations and help themselves get situated better? That is the goal. I told you it's not about the tool. Lance Armstrong wrote this wonderful book called It's Not About the Bike. But I know if I quote that book, you will tell me we know what it was about. But nevertheless, I will tell you that it's never about the tool, but what kind of conversations we have about the tool, because of the tool, and what kind of results emerge from the tool. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, it's important for us to create meaning out of tools, not just emptily deploy tools. And the last of my stories out here, I have one more I think, but I hope you'll indulge me in that, which is the running group that I went to created a Google group. And the Google group used to have incessant chatter, all runners, and there used to be people exchanging a lot of mails. And every Saturday night, we had a lot of mail exchanges about driving from Powai, which is where I live in Mumbai, to Nariman Point, which is where we start our runs. Sunday morning runs start at 5 o'clock for us, which means at 4:15 or so, we have to start our drive from Powai. Now, you can understand 4:15 on Sunday morning means 8 o'clock at bed on Saturday night. And you can also understand how much the family will love you for that. But that's what it was. And this Google group, it started out because people said, let's plan out in the interest of oil conservation and all of that. Can we carpool together? Can we do a few things? And it started out. And soon people started exchanging stories. People started exchanging stories about, you know what, I found this website interesting. You know what, this particular runner impressed me. How was your take today? How did your run go today? This was the chatter which was happening. Everybody who was running was signed up on the group. The best thing was, people who did not run on a particular day used to get 50 messages about how the run went for others. People who did run, or people who did not run, or people who had a lousy day would get 50 other messages which said, I had a bad day too. The weather was bad and you had something to blame it on. And this kind of community was extremely important for us to do something. There's this wonderful restaurant called Chili's out in Powai. I know you have it out here as well. That's where people used to assemble and people used to talk about what all is happening, and very soon, running became an incidental core. Running was the core, but it soon became incidental. We were more friends. We are more friends than anything else. And what was happening is, what's continuing to happen is, I don't show up for runs. I haven't been running for the last couple of weeks, and I had somebody call me up and say, what's up? I'm not seeing you. I know that 5:45 in the morning when I just hit the snooze button on the alarm, I know if it's going to be 6 o'clock, somebody is going to call me up. And I know I better go. And after you go, it's fun. And therefore, what became important was the importance of a community. The importance of a community is so critical, was so critical for me as a runner, and it is so critical for learners. In organizations, we need to see how can we embed learning on the job, and how can organizational groups become communities really, and communities where learning will thrive. So where there are shared histories and there are shared stories. When our ex-chief executive was retiring, we had one request of him. He had spent 30 plus years with Asian Paints and he was retiring. So we had one request of him. We went up to him and said, "Sir, when you go, we want you to do this for us. Could you write a series of blog posts on what was your journey in Asian Paints?" And he blogged about several facets of the organization at different points in time, what all was experienced. He spoke about a time when the first plant was set up. He spoke about a time when one type of paint was introduced. He spoke about a time when there was industrial turbulence. And what's happened therefore is those are the stuff that are prescribed reading for new joinees now. Those blog posts are preserved, and those are prescribed reading which are automatically pushed to anybody who joins in new. Because those contain our history, our shared stories, and our shared set of what has been our background, and not for people to assume that this is the way we always have been. We have been small and we have stumbled along the way is something that we want people to understand very clearly. And if you follow Jane on Twitter, she's done some wonderful research on communities of practice, and she's worked on the Wenger model extremely well, and a PhD is based on that. It's an awesome work that you may want to refer to and see how we can be builders and nurturers of a community and not really work on programs. And therefore, learning and development, ladies and gentlemen, the role has shifted. The role has shifted from being people who will organize programs to people who will build ecosystems. Ecosystems where learning is embedded on the jobs and people have an innate urge to pick up things from different sources. If we haven't done that, maybe it's time for us to think about it very importantly. We have to see how we can shape experiences, and one important thing is our role metaphorically has shifted from being traffic cops to town planners. People who will regulate, you go, you will get this learning asset, you will get to experience this kind of learning. From that, it has shifted to town planners, where we understand how things will automatically move and people are cued in to follow a few things and people will pick up things on their own. That is a tremendous shift, and that requires a new set of skills. It doesn't pervade our industry, but it's something that we have to really work on. All said and done, it takes an entire village to raise a kid. It's very similar with our employees as well. It takes the entire organization. It's not the function of learning and development or one particular department. It's the entire organization which holds development together. And if you look at where this is all accented on, well, I told you, I hope you will indulge me in one more story. And I got featured in Hindustan Times the day before the full marathon. This was a euphoric day for me, because Hindustan Times said runners pushed their limits, and they said, okay, this guy is also pushing his limits. And the next day I did actually run. I thought you will give me a bigger round of applause for this. This was a full marathon. This was full marathon. A full marathon, by the way, is 42 kilometers. For those of you who do not know, and I didn't listen to anybody who asked me a time. I said I finished. Okay, I didn't venture out near, but I finished in about 5 hours. And if you think about the Kenyans and the Ethiopians, they would have finished, they would have gone home, they would have raised children and sent them to college by that time. But I finished. And that was my biggest moment, so to speak. And I promptly blogged about it, and that was featured in the DNA. And what is important was I would have never ever been able to run 42 kilometers, let alone 21. I would never been able to run if this community was not there. This community was the one that was instrumental in getting me forward. There are opportunities for us to build such communities in our workplaces, and it's important for us to build. In summary, ladies and gentlemen, we saw community, we saw creation of meaning. We talked about building commitment using choice, and we spoke about building collaborative experiences. How should we chunk, and how should we help our people see? Maybe if you look at it, there seems to be a model evolving, and we can perhaps call it the 7C model. I told you we'll talk about 7 things that can help you dominate the world. Here they are: community, creation, commitment, choice, collaboration, and chunking. The last one was C, S-E-E, but I cheekily thought maybe we should give it a C. And maybe that's what you will think this presentation was worth. But that's not the point. The point is we should perhaps see far beyond all of this. We must perhaps see in much wonder, in much curiosity than we perhaps do right now. And that brings me to the end of this presentation. Actually, maybe not quite the end, because true love stories have no ending. And ladies and gentlemen, while you're learning, may I request you to try running and keep running. Thank you very much.